All right. Well, welcome to DonorConnect, Finding a Home in the Heartland. I'm Sarah Reichart, Charitable Giving Advisor here at the Community Foundation. We are so grateful that you made time with us today to talk about such an important and timely topic as refugee resettlement in Iowa. We host DonorConnects to connect donors to causes they care about. It's a core part of our mission, and we are so grateful that you've joined the discussion. And to be a part of this discussion today, if you have any questions or thoughts, please enter those in the chat and we'll get to those later today. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce Christy Naus, our president here, to lead our discussion. Christy?
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everybody for joining us for this very relevant and meaningful conversation today. Like some of you joining us today, Greater Des Moines is not my hometown, but it's very much become my life town. It's the place where I've been privileged to build a career, raise my family, and build treasured friendships. I would say that Greater Des Moines has definitely welcomed me and my family with open arms, and I'm forever grateful for its warm embrace. Throughout our history, and right now, as we're making history, Iowa has had the valuable opportunity to welcome new individuals and families to our communities. After facing unimaginable challenges, refugees seeking safety and refuge are finding a landing place in our community. Iowa may not be their hometown, but we each have an opportunity to offer support and the welcoming spirit that makes our community and state a place where their dreams can be dreamt, their needs can be met, and the challenges of their yesterdays can become a path forward to their tomorrows. We can make this their life town. As we seek to welcome refugees into our community, I'm thankful there are many incredible and brave nonprofit organizations working tirelessly to meet this population's very unique needs. I'm honored to have with me this morning 5 of those organizations who are dedicated to ensuring refugees arriving in Iowa have the support they need to succeed. I'm so grateful for the folks on this panel and the organizations they represent. I'm thankful for their commitment and advocacy as they bring to life our tagline of Better Together. And I can't wait for you to meet them. So with that, I'd like to welcome our panelists to the screen. We've got, and I'll do an introduction so you can get to know them better through that. We've got Mak Shucheska. Mak serves as the Bureau Chief for the Iowa Bureau of Refugee Services, in addition to his role as the State of Iowa Refugee Coordinator through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Originally from Bosnia, Mak came to Des Moines in 1993 as a refugee fleeing from war-torn Yugoslavia with his family. Mak's journey has provided unique perspectives that have guided his 12 years of work advocating and supporting refugees across the state. We've also got Stephanie Morris. Stephanie is the director of the Refugee Alliance of Central Iowa, or ROSI for short. She's been involved with ROSI since 2013. Prior to her service at ROSI, Stephanie has worked with refugee and immigrant communities on topics spanning from education to employment and wraparound direct case management. We've also got Kellen Anker joining us from Catholic Charities Refugee Resettlement Program. She's their program manager since June of 2020. She provides comprehensive management of the Refugee Services Program, ensuring the best possible services for newly arriving Iowans. We've got Nick Wirtz, who serves as the Director of Refugee and Immigrant Services at Lutheran Services in Iowa, or LSI. Nick has been with LSI since 2006, where he has worked to welcome refugee and immigrant families while also enhancing services for newcomers in Central Iowa and around the state. Nick also serves as the chair of ROSI, Refugee Alliance of Central Iowa. And we have Carrie True Funk, who serves as the director for the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. Prior to accepting this role in 2019, she worked in the anti-violence movement for more than a decade as the director of operations and special projects at the State Sexual Assault Coalition and the founding executive director of a local rape crisis center. As you can see, our panel is full of professionals passionate about helping newcomers feel welcome in our community, but also helping all of us, their new neighbors, understand how they add value and contribute their skills and experiences to enhance our community. Such good stuff. So with that, let's get started with our conversation. And we do hope that it's just that, a conversation among the panel. And we plan to infuse your questions, comments, observations into the conversation as well. So please use the chat function on this Zoom call to let us know what your questions are or any observations or comments, and we'll be sure to share them with the panel either through the conversation or afterwards. So panelists, again, thank you so much for being here today. We'd like to get to know you and your organizations a little better. And as we begin, I'd like for each of you to tell us more about how your organization plays a unique role in the refugee resettlement process. And Mark, I'm going to start with you to tell us more about the Bureau and its role, but also to sort of help paint the picture of how the system of refugee resettlement works in Iowa and here locally. And then we'll move on to our other panelists. So Mark.
Sure. Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity and thank you all for being here today. As Christy mentioned, my name is Mark Sucheska and I serve as the Bureau Chief and State Refugee Coordinator for the Iowa Bureau of Refugee Services. Although we are a part of the refugee network and overall service provision, we are not, in fact, a nonprofit. We are a state agency within the Department of Human Services that helps support all ORR eligible populations across the state of Iowa. So that includes refugees initially settled to the state, secondary migrants, those who out-migrate from a different part of the country, choose to make Iowa their home, victims of human trafficking, Cuban Haitian entrants, and asylees. So if any of those individuals or populations reside in Iowa, they are eligible for our services through the Bureau. We help support communities and primarily our resettlement partners in the overall resettlement and integration of these communities to Iowa and whatever neighborhood or community they reside in across the state. We have been in existence since 1975. In a past time, we did serve as the only state agency across the country that was administering resettlement services to help Southeast Asian refugees fleeing from Vietnam and that part of the world and making Iowa their home as refugees. Throughout the years, we helped support refugee resettlement of many different populations, but right now we really find ourselves in the scope of supporting refugee families and those populations towards economic mobility and sustainability through job searches, job retention, and working with our local nonprofits to help ensure an overall successful resettlement of our families. As resettlement is structured today, it's really led by our local nonprofits that you will hear on the call today, who do the day-to-day grassroots efforts in ensuring that our families and new Iowans have the supports and resources for their successful integration and long-term sustainable integration into their new communities. We work with families for a certain amount of time, somewhere between 90 to 180 days, and for our agency, up to 5 years. And our resettlement partners will kind of touch on that, what the scope of services entail and that framework. Our goal really as a network, not only here locally, but across the state, is to establish an infrastructure that is welcoming, safe, and sustainable for our most vulnerable citizens and also newcomers, which include refugees. Through a scope of service provisions, collaborations, and work that we do, we really try to ensure that this infrastructure is maintained, that if there are gaps that exist, we work together to address those and alleviate any barriers or hurdles towards economic mobility and sustainability. During this time, we have really seen the refugee world and network change drastically, not only from the previous 4 years of the previous administration, but with COVID-19, the derecho storm that hit last year, and now the Afghan crisis. We've been mobilized to work at an exponential rate to ensure that that infrastructure is sustainable and in place for our new families. What that looks like, it really depends on the day and the circumstances. We try to ensure that the foundational pieces are in place, from access to adequate and safe housing, access to culturally and linguistically appropriate medical services and social services, to really working with our local ethnic community-based organizations, nonprofits, our private sector employer partners, as well as state government, to really enhance and continue that development of the infrastructure. As we look at the newest population that's making their way to Iowa, we are really working around the clock with our partners and our overall network to ensure that our Afghan arrivals have the supports they need for that successful transition and integration into their new community. Mm-hmm. As a country, we were involved within Afghanistan for over 20 years. And I think regardless of party and political affiliation, we've seen a great mobilization of our community to help these individuals. And so we are continuing to do that. We are anticipating some 700 individuals to arrive to the state, with that number ever fluctuating and changing. Carrie, Nick, and Kellen can touch on that. They are in the thick of things with helping support families. But we're really looking to maintain those lines of communication open and transparent, working with the greater community, folks on this call, to really ensure that people have a welcoming and safe home once they arrive to Iowa.
Thank you, Mark. Stephanie, I'm going to go to you next because of just the coordination that you do, and then we'll get to the organizations that are doing that hands-on work.
Sure. Thanks. First of all, thank you to everyone for being here today and taking time out to learn more about this, about refugee resettlement in general. I think I can probably speak for everyone on the call or all the panelists just by saying that we're grateful for your interest and your care. So so the Refugee Alliance has been around for a little under 10 years, and our purpose really is to be a collaborative and to bring people together who are vested in seeing Central Iowa being a welcoming place to refugees and immigrants. So we bring together, of course, resettlement agencies, the state, the cities, counties. We have work groups, so we have members, health providers, mental health providers, Department of Education, Department of Labor, elected officials, and then just kind of everyone in between. And then our most important members, and of course, are our ethnic community-based nonprofit leaders or our community leaders themselves, who really guide all of the work that Rossi does. So we have work groups that touch on a variety of sectors, and that information can be found on our website. So if anyone is interested in wanting to get involved with some of the work group efforts or learning more about that information is there. Rossi also helps to organize the Refugee Day on the Hill, which happens in March-esque every year in collaboration with everybody on the call here, or the resettlement providers and then other community organizations. We also help organize the World Refugee Day, which the UNHCR, which is the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, they designated June 20th to be that date, and that's recognized internationally, to just really, honor our refugee communities and the journeys that they've undergone to get to Iowa, and just the innumerable ways, that they really make our state a better place for everyone. And then we also organize the Refugee Summit, which is actually something that we're currently in the middle of. We offer, typically it's a 1 to 2 day event in person, and we all get together and share incredible resources and information. And just, have amazing food from, refugee immigrant-owned restaurants. And it's a great learning opportunity for anyone that works directly with refugee families or community members. But with COVID, we are this year, once again, we are 100% virtual, but we will have a couple of more webinars. We're working to have a Refugee Resettlement 101 for people who are interested in learning how that process actually works, from when someone flees their home to when they arrive in Iowa, and what those first few years look like. And just kind of everyone who's involved, how the steps along the way. We also will be having a mental health week here, likely in December, where we're going to hear from community leaders about how mental health is addressed and managed within their own communities. And then we also have 3 agencies that offer domestic violence specific services that we'll hear about as well. So, and then, of course, with resettlement in response to what's going on in Afghanistan, we've been working really hard with all of the people on this, all of the other panelists on this call. So resettlement agencies and other community partners to just really make sure that their needs are supported. I know that there's been winter clothing drives. There's been, furniture needs. I know USCRI currently has a food drive going on as they have 77 individuals arriving. So yeah, just working together to really make sure that we as a community are able to help support their needs, however, whenever they come up.
Excellent. Thank you. I know our church is doing something right now to just prepare and people want to do something. And we'll talk more about how folks can engage as well as we move on. So let's see. Kellen, thanks for joining us from your car. Be safe.
Of course, yes.
You're pulled over.
I am safely parked. A meeting I had went longer than expected, so I wasn't able to make it back to the office.
No worries.
Safely parked in a fire department parking lot is the best place I could be. So
no worries, exactly. So tell us more about Catholic Charities and the role that you play with resettlement here in our community.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Kellen Anker. I'm the Refugee Services Program Manager with Catholic Charities here in Des Moines. Catholic Charities has been in existence as an organization since 1925, but our refugee resettlement services have been going strong since about 2010. Like you noted, I joined about a year and a half ago. And so our role in the community of welcoming refugees and immigrants and all the different kind of immigration status people to Central Iowa is to kind of do that initial welcome and work with them predominantly for the first 90 days. So that includes a variety of things, from airport welcome to making sure that they have culturally appropriate hot food available for the first few days, to setting them up in housing. Then we kind of start working on employment and ESL classes and school enrollment and making sure that their medical needs are being met. We'll do a cultural orientation. We set them up with public benefits. We make referrals to all of the other wonderful organizations here in Central Iowa to help them meet other needs. So we're kind of their kind of first initial point of contact through kind of our oh my gosh, my brain just stopped. Excuse me. Our reception and placement programming. So we welcome, the numbers have kind of varied over the years, especially with kind of recent changes in administration and with COVID. But this year we kind of hope to welcome about 165 individual families through our traditional refugee pipeline. And then additionally, we expect to welcome maybe about 100 to 110 more Afghan families.
Wow.
So so we are busy. Our team is doing a great job serving the families we have already received, and we are preparing, like USCRI is right now, to welcome some more here probably in early December. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We do have a few other programs. We have a match grant program that focuses on employment that can work up to 180 days. We have a program called Power, which connects parishes and parish volunteers with families and refugees to help volunteer and support them. And then we just newly in June started a kind of post-resettlement program. We haven't fully been able to get it off of the ground as anticipated because of the situation in Afghanistan kind of took precedent, but that the goal with that program is to kind of continually help our refugee families and clients after that kind of 90 days, making sure that they're making those connections with all of the wonderful resources that are available in Des Moines, and know that they are supported by a lot of different wonderful entities. So that's what we are doing here. Thank you for having us, and I'm glad you're all here.
We use the term time flies. I can only imagine how fast 90 days goes when you're coming in. And that's not a lot of time. Nick, let's get to you next and learn more. You've worked in this field for a long, long time and have a lot of experience. I'm anxious to hear from you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Christine, thanks everybody for being here. Nick works with LSI, and as an organization, we've had a long history of providing support to refugees and immigrants. We were founded by immigrants back in the mid-1800s, responding to orphan children after the Civil War. So welcoming immigrants has always been a core part of our mission. We started with kind of refugee resettlement actually post-World War II and provided resettlement services up until 2010. And in 2010, due to some of those constraints, that short window of time to provide services, we really felt a call to focus on kind of what comes next, what comes after that. Supporting families who've arrived and, really helping them take advantage of opportunities that are here in the community, providing that ongoing support. And there's just so many things that people bring with them in terms of skills and gifts and experiences that 90 Days wasn't affording us the opportunity to help connect them with. So we've, for the last 11 years, have really been focused on developing kind of some next step programs. And so that includes English language classes, citizenship classes, opportunities for people to start small businesses, save for their first homes, cars, do financial literacy, and some additional mental health support for the community. So kind of a wide variety of services. And with the anticipated increase of refugee arrivals and Afghan arrivals, we are becoming a refugee resettlement partner again to kind of meet that need, both here in Des Moines as well as in Sioux City. So we're preparing to begin receiving families here in Des Moines sometime in the month of December, and project about 300 people over the next year, and then Sioux City in early 2022.
Wow. Okay. Thanks for that. And Carrie, let's get to you next. Thanks for being patient.
No problem. Thanks for having me. So the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants has been around for over 110 years. It was birthed out of the YWCA and the International Institute movement in the early 1900s, in which there was a lot of work going on in the cities helping resettle recent immigrants to the United States. We've been here in Iowa since 2010. We came in as a resettlement partner as there was transitions in who was providing resettlement services in central Iowa. We have historically been since our office opened, the largest refugee resettlement agency, but we're all growing quite quickly, as you can tell from numbers. We, in the month of November alone, are welcoming a total of 77 individuals, primarily from Afghanistan. On Monday, we have 25 arriving, and then on the 30th, we have another 22. So it's kind of an all hands on deck situation. In addition to our resettlement services, which are very similar to what Kellen and Nick talked about, we provide a Refugee Wellness program that helps refugees that have chronic and critical medical conditions learn how to navigate the U.S. healthcare system and advocate for themselves. Additionally, we have a small anti-trafficking program that works primarily with foreign-born survivors of labor trafficking. And we have a free and low-cost immigration legal services clinic that does a lot of work around green cards and status adjustments for refugees and immigrants living in central Iowa. We are running these other programs basically at capacity all of the time, just simply because there's not enough services, especially when it comes to immigration legal services for individuals that need that help. We're happy to be welcoming, we're predicting close to 600 refugees, including Afghan evacuees over the federal fiscal year 2022, which we're almost 2 months into right now. And from here, we are just happy to be working with the community and getting a chance to engage and expand services and support those that are joining us as new Iowan neighbors.
I have so many questions, and there are great questions in the chat. So I'm trying to process where I want to go next, but I think people have a question about how this is funded. So I want to get to the lives of the refugees and the many ways that they enhance our communities. But let's continue painting the picture here a little bit. where does the money come from to do the work that you're doing? And did we used to provide more than 90 days of support? And, how are we funding that additional work that needs to happen? Mock, I don't know if it's best to start with you again. Are you sort of the channel for some of that federal funding, and how does it get infused to these organizations? Paint that picture for us, because I don't know the answer.
The money just grows on trees.
Oh yeah, here too.
It's infinite. No, the money is allocated through federal means, and so each resettlement agency, through their national VOLAC partners at their headquarters, they work with the State Department to ensure funding for the viability of their programs. There are two sets of funding that supports local efforts here, particularly in Iowa and in Polk County, through federal means as well as state dollars. Our agency, as the State Refugee Coordinator's Office, we are 100% federally funded through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So some extended programming that could be offered through financial means that our office would provide, we would contract or support extended services to the resettlement agencies. The RMP, or reception and placement period program, alongside the matching grant program that Kellen touched on, those are federally funded programs, or matched through federal means, and what services are provided here at the local level that would be matched at the federal level. So there are multiple funding streams, but the viability of the programs that we have here locally, a lot of that is funneled through the State Refugee Coordinator's Office, that being the Bureau of Refugee Services, and then we either contract or provide support directly to ECBOs, nonprofits, and program development and or technical assistance.
So, so those of you that provide the services, I'm imagining that that funding has to be supplemented through donor funds, other grant seeking, those sorts of things. Are you finding success then and extending beyond the 90-day period with that sort of community support, or what other types of funding streams are you working with?
Yeah, I just add, and I saw the question about, sort of the time period. So the Department of State funding that Mock mentioned does come through to each of the resettlement agencies, and it's a per person grant. So it provides, a certain amount of money for staffing costs and a certain amount of money to cover kind of that first 3 months of rent and living expenses for the family, as our organizations are working with those families to find employment and become self-sufficient. So that's part of the reason that time frame is there, because but per the contract with the Department of State, that's the time period that the core services are supposed to be provided in, and the funding to cover that. So to your question, Gary, yes, there's a whole, or Christy, sorry, there's a whole slew of additional support and resources needed, as we said, to kind of support newcomers in our community, to provide some of that extended support and connect them to different community resources. And so that's really where the local community, through financial contributions, through volunteer support and in-kind support, can really make a meaningful impact.
Awesome.
And for some of our longer term services, we do have other funding sources through the Crime Victims Assistance Division, through the United Way of Central Iowa. Right now, especially for our Afghan arrivals, because people are coming with so little, even less clothing and things than what typical refugees come with. We're relying pretty heavily on donor dollars to help us kind of bridge the gap between what we're able to pay for through the per person funding and what the actual needs of the families once they're here in Iowa is.
Okay, so one more quick question. So someone is resettling to Iowa. How do they get here, and how do they get connected to your organizations? Who manages that?
So I can tackle that one. Like Muck mentioned, we all have a national, what's called a VOLAG, or a voluntary agency. So they're the ones working with the State Department and the IOM, the International Organization for Migration. And they're the ones who essentially assign cases to us as affiliates. And they're the ones who schedule the flights and all of the travel. and all of that. So we are alerted usually with 2 weeks, kind of with some of our more recent Afghan arrivals, it's less than that. We are kind of alert of their arrival, and we're given information ahead of time so we can start preparing, those housings. A lot of the clients we work with have what we call U.S. ties. So a relative usually here in central Iowa or Iowa in general, that can kind of support us in that. So it's all of that is kind of done on a more federal level until they arrive here in Iowa. And then we kind of take over from there.
Is that similar then to the other organizations, that process? Okay. Interesting. So as you step into the shoes of those you serve, can you share with us what it looks like to establish a new home in Iowa? So for example, as you serve refugee populations and their families, what do you find they bring with them, both physically and metaphorically, when they arrive here in our great state and community?
Yeah, as I mentioned, most refugees that come are literally coming with a couple of suitcases. Some of our more recent Afghan arrivals might be coming for a two-person family with one suitcase, but typically there's just clothing coming with the family. So before they get here, ideally, we and all of the resettlement partners try and locate initial housing, so apartments that the furniture and all of the household goods put together ahead of time, so that the day that they come to Iowa, they have somewhere to go home to. This has been a little bit of a struggle because of the pace of arrivals recently, and the fact that there is not a lot of available housing, especially for the larger families. But we make sure that even if we don't have a home for them to go to, that they have somewhere safe and clean to stay. So extended stay hotels, Airbnbs, those sorts of situations. So they're coming with very little, and we're providing them with what they need to kind of get their lives off of the ground, to get things set up. I would say one of the biggest things that they're coming with is hopes and dreams with their future, as well as fears about, living in the US. This is a brand new country. A lot of them have been through a lot of trauma, a lot of violence, a lot of war. And so they're hopeful that they're able to come here and have a safe place for their families to raise their kids, and that they're accepted here and able to get, good jobs like everybody wants, that their kids are able to go to school, and that they're able to kind of live their family's dream.
Anybody have
I'd be more than happy to chime in a little bit on this as well. I want to just touch on the previous question that was framed around how people get here, or why do they come to Iowa. A lot of the work that's done up front before we get a final tally or number of who's going to be coming to Iowa, the resettlement agencies are consulting within the network to ensure that the welcoming community has the resources to accommodate whatever number of refugees are going to be arriving. So the resettlement agencies are working with a multitude of stakeholders, from healthcare to schools to local nonprofits, public safety, to ensure that there is a viable community and infrastructure before any sort of number or determination is made before individuals arrive. So it's not just that, USCRI is going to get 200 people. It's a very thought out, strategic process that goes into play before final numbers are secured. But as far as, what refugees bring with themselves, I think refugees, from personal note, going through the experience at a young age, remembering what I do, but also what I learned from my parents, was that refugees come with a great sense of loss. Nobody wants to leave their home unless they're forced to and have to make a decision to flee and find a new home. Fortunately, with Iowa's legacy that has been in place for some time, many refugees call Iowa their home. I think when you look at the scope of circumstances and who is arriving, we are really intentional looking at the individual as opposed to the status. So people are coming from lives and backgrounds that they're hoping to transfer here or have opportunities and access to continue what they left. and if not, are working very hard to what Carrie shared, to aspire to their dreams and to not only support themselves, but the families that they are arriving with. So we're talking about people who used to be engineers, doctors, physicians, prominent figures within their community and religious leaders. Not everyone, but some. And so what we really try to do as a network is look at the individual and family holistically, as opposed to the circumstances they came from or what their status is, and really strive to provide access and opportunities to meet their dreams and desires, just like you and I have. So I would say that's really what something to take back and to consider as we potentially work with folks on this call and what we are continuing to do moving forward.
I love that you shared. I love that you shared that. And there are so many ways that these new neighbors of ours enrich our community. And I'd like you just to reflect on that a little bit. You all have so many years of experience, and help us know more about how we can welcome them in, and the beauty that you've seen in the and just the diversity and enrichment that they add. Nick, I saw that you unmuted.
Yeah, I'd love to tag onto that one. And that's really kind of what really inspired LSI, 11 years ago to say, what can we do to really unlock the potential that people bring to this community in terms of their skills and experiences. And so, we have a few programs that were started really in response to populations that had come to Iowa from Central African countries and Burma and Bhutan, who had a love for farming and growing food, and that's what they knew how to do in their home country. That was their livelihood. And so through our Global Greens program, have found ways to start, community gardens in local neighborhoods, and are actually helping people incubate small farming businesses. And, they're launching businesses where they're growing local, sustainably grown food to feed our community, not just themselves, but our entire community. And so we have a local farmers market and CSA that those farmers sell through, graduating off onto their own land to continue those businesses. We have a childcare training program. We've heard so much, especially throughout the pandemic, of how critical and what a shortage there is in childcare. And so over the last 9 years, we've helped train 150 women from 16 different language groups to become in-home childcare providers through the state. So again, they're really helping to address a community need, but also, starting a business that's helping support their families. I just think people have endured so much, and there's certainly a lot of challenge, but just the perseverance and the hope for the future. I think it's just incredible to see what people do when they get here, whether it's starting a new business or getting back into a career field, and the impact they can have and the contributions they have in our community. So that's really what's exciting, and I think exciting about welcoming a newer population to our community as well.
I don't know if anyone else has a comment on that. I do have another question from one of our attendees, and it sort of, I think, leads into this. And, we have such a shortage for workers, right? And, Mark, you mentioned, some are doctors, some are engineers. So there are also barriers that I've heard of that, really prohibit them from practicing in the way that they might have. But this is a little bit directed to that. What role do legal services play? Oh, it just lost it. What role do legal services play for the sustainable and long-term integration of immigrants and refugees in Iowa?
Well, legal services play a great role. Carrie mentioned the offerings through USCRI. We have other local agencies and nonprofits that are providing pro bono or low-cost services for legal needs. And so, when we as service providers, it's important to really understand the family situation and what is facing the family to better be able to serve them. And so through the Refugee Alliance of Central Iowa, through other alliances across the state, legal entities and services play a major role in helping support refugees and immigrants. when we look at the Afghan community that is arriving and that will continue to arrive, legal services and supports will be vital to the long-term success and integration of the resettlement of these families. And so it's going to be very important that as a network, we understand and acknowledge those needs, and then asking ourselves what we need to do to ensure those services are accessible and appropriate within the framework of language and culture and understanding where people are coming from. So legal services, that's a long answer, but it plays a vital role. It has been a part of the conversation and a part of the network, and will continue to be a part of that conversation going forward.
Mm-hmm. Is there enough access? Is there adequate access? Oops, you're muted.
I would say from a scope of services, you take a look at what you have and you leverage that. But I think in the overall general framework and infrastructure that we have, there's always an opportunity to look at what gaps exist and to enhance those scope of services. So I don't necessarily, want to say that there isn't enough, but we could always add more, I guess, if that makes sense. So, we have quality services that are being administered as we speak, and that have been for a long time. Nick touched on some of the extended services. Carrie and Kellen touched on what they offer through their extended scope as well as the Refugee Alliance of Central Iowa. I think it's really a matter of looking at what doesn't exist and how do we create it, as opposed to just asking what more do we need. So it has to be a thoughtful and intentional conversation where then we can start to fill those gaps and have a solid infrastructure moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Carrie, did you have something to add there? I saw you on mute for a second. Okay.
Hey, Christy, could I just really quick, there was there was a question about employment, and I just wanted to throw out, just as an additional resource, part of the summit this year, we actually had an employer panel where we had 5 employers that have a lot of experience with hiring refugees. So how do you connect with refugee groups? Just lessons learned, best practices, obviously why it was the best decision that they've ever made for their business. So that webinar is actually recorded and available as part of the summit on the WRASI website. So just if people had additional questions or wanted more information about that resource is there too.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to get to the question of how people can engage, but I got another one here that's really good. Nick, did you have something? Oh, wait, somebody's got their thing on. Hold on. Oh,
yeah, I do. I just want to add to what Stephanie was sharing. When we talk about services and what is offered to the community, it's important to note that these services are administered through case managers or social work staff. So individuals that are being represented or supported by our respective agencies have someone working with them during this 90 to 180 day timeline. There are individuals working to help support the farming and child care service programs that Nick was touching on. These nonprofits have staff that are working with these folks one-on-one. I don't want to assume that people know, but I just want to be clear that, if somebody's looking for a job, there's somebody with one of these agencies helping them fill out a resume, go to an interview, helping them do that job search, for example.
That's excellent. Yeah, I love the concrete examples. Thank you. So I think this is a really good question from one of our attendees, and I'd like each of you to take a second on it. A minute on it. If there's one thing you could change about the infrastructure and systems of bringing in refugees, what would you change and how would it help? Do we each have a list?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, and there was a question that kind of ties into that was asked earlier in the chat. Why 90 days when in 1975 BRS was working with families for up to 2 years?
Yeah.
Resettlement has drastically changed within the purpose of what resettlement is entailed to do. Right now, it's very employment focused, getting folks financially self-sufficient as quickly as possible. If there was one thing that I would change, and I think my esteemed colleagues would share this sentiment as well, is that we just need more time in the resettlement process to work with families for that successful integration. 90 days is very difficult. And even some of our higher skilled refugees who do arrive with employment background, education, and even language, even 180 days is very challenging to successfully integrate. So I think time and how long we work with families on the front end to ensure that long-term integration is successful is something that we would change from our perspective.
All right, now you can't all say the same thing because I bet there are more. Stephanie, what would you change?
Yeah, it's a big question. I feel like more time would be wonderful. Obviously, more funding. I don't know if people know this. When refugees arrive, they arrive in debt. They have to pay back the costs of the plane tickets that they used just to arrive.
No, I wouldn't know that.
Yeah. So when you were talking about, like, if it's a single mom that has like 4 kids, for example, that's a lot of money in plane tickets already. And so expecting her to be fully, self-sufficient and financially independent in 3 to 6 months is a really big ask. So yeah, more time, more funding would be lovely, but also, I think that one of the things that Iowa is really, really good at historically is, just kind of putting aside organizational or political or, kind of any thought and really trying to come together to welcome these community members as best as we can. So just, I think remembering that legacy and especially, considering that Afghanistan, these arrivals, this is not regular refugee resettlement. This is a humanitarian crisis. So things change. Things are very, fluctuating, extending that grace. And just, being a little, adaptable, flexible with as arrivals over the next year happen, just now knowing that, you have, like, there's this debt, there's this short window, there's limited finances. Again, just showing that grace and being flexible and adaptable as Afghans arrive, and then as regular refugee resettlement placement picks back up.
Excellent.
I just can't stress enough though that time and funding piece is, to be able to extend that would be critical. I know you said we couldn't say the same thing.
Yeah, I know. It's okay.
In this case, Yeah,
it's important. Kellen.
Well, I am going to mirror the time part. We all know that it is, but I think for us, we're fortunate that we have a lot of systems in place for a lot of the real main kind of core services. Employment, housing, we have partners, we have those things. But I find, especially with some of our more recent Afghan arrivals, there's a lot of questions about just integrating into the community that our case managers, just because of situations, don't always have time to address. And I think that's a bigger need than we might focus on, is how you adapt to this culture and make it work with your own culture. And kind of being able to spend time in making those connections and answering those questions and really working with people to feel more comfortable. Being able to spend more time doing that, I think would add to the success of, both communities, us and them, in working together and really enriching our communities. And then I would also touch on, mental health has become kind of more prevalent just overall. And I think, we've had lots of conversations on that. And I think especially, the trauma that, Carrie had touched on from not only our Afghan arrivals, but all of our refugee clients, these are communities that it's not necessarily a big deal to kind of talk about mental health outside of your, family unit. And so I think being able to focus on those services, whatever that might look like, would also be another thing that I think would be a wonderful thing to be able to enhance.
Great. All right. So I'm going to ask you to be brief, Nick and Carrie, in your responses, because I do want to get to the final question.
Yeah, and I would just echo my colleagues, in terms of additional time. And I think just to kind of give an example, a lot of the kind of post-resettlement longer-term services that we provide that are kind of addressing some specific needs, a lot of them, the core funding is provided through maybe a federal grant that, we have to reapply for every 2 or 3 years. And so it's not necessarily even a guarantee that our community, can offer that service or have that service available. And from our perspective, these are things, whether it's citizenship classes or ESL classes or, career training, things that should just be a part of our kind of the resources and infrastructure that we have as a community. So whether that's additional federal resources or things looking at the state legislature to invest in kind of really a more holistic suite of, I would say, welcoming services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Carrie, anything new to add there?
The only thing that I want to add, and it's related to something that, time would be really helpful for, when we talk about refugees coming to the community that have education and work histories, we don't even during the initial resettlement period have enough time to fully apply for and then get proof of their credentialing. So if you have somebody that's attended college in another country, you have to work with a service in order to get that education evaluated and come up with the American equivalent of what kind of degree they have, what their status would then be able to, if they need licensure, anything like that. And that takes months because you have to obtain transcripts from overseas and have them translated as well as then evaluated. So time would be a huge asset there.
Points are so good. And, it's just shedding light for those of us that don't get exposure to this. So I'm just so grateful. A final question. We have some really wonderful attendees today, community advocates, volunteers, donors joining us who are anxious to help. What are some of the most meaningful ways we as a community or individuals or families can become allies and support our refugee community and come around your organizations as well? So I'm going to have each of you just give a couple thoughts on that so we can just wrap up by noon, if that's okay. And Kellen, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so right now we've kind of found volunteers are definitely something that we need because of the state of refugee resettlement. A few years ago, we're a small team and we are growing, but having volunteer support for apartment setups, for donation pickups, for kind of organizing and packing for families, even in the office, we can always use volunteers there. We're working on a program where we would have volunteers be connected with some of our clients to just kind of help them with kind of just additional. Volunteers are very much something that we need. Certainly financial and or donations of goods are always helpful. We have information on our website on kind of what our immediate needs are and what our kind of long-term consistent needs are as well. So our website would be the best place to find all of that kind of information.
Thank you so much. Carrie?
Our needs are very similar to Kellen's. Volunteers are worth their weight in gold.
Yes.
They are going to be just fantastic in helping us get through these next few months. Additionally, we outfit apartments for every arrival, including providing new beds. So we are in need of both, in-kind donations like couches, tables, as well as funds to purchase beds with. And so those are kind of our biggest areas of need right now.
Okay, very good to know. And just a reminder, we will do a follow-up email to all of our participants today, and we will help you know how to get connected to these organizations as well. Nick?
Yeah, and just to kind of tap on that last topic of time and support, we as an organization, we are trying to raise $500,000 before the end of the year just to really help our team prepare for and have adequate staff to support families and additional resources to help families who are coming to the community. And in addition to that, also looking for volunteers who can help provide that mentorship and support, helping people find job opportunities, practice, job interviews, things like that. And then also preparing welcome boxes. So those things that help furnish homes. So, and all of those things as well are out on our website.
Excellent. Stephanie?
Yeah, I think that for people wanting to get engaged either with, our current Afghan arrivals on the RASI website, all 3 resettlement agencies have their link there that goes directly to their donation page. So if you're looking for the link or wanting to figure out how to connect, that's there. I would also say, if you don't get our newsletter, our ethnic community-based nonprofits and other community leaders, when they have events, I think it's really important for community members to show up and be present and show their support to that. That makes a really big impact. So those events are always announced through our newsletter and on our website. Our summit, if you're wanting to learn more, is a really great place. There's a bunch of recorded webinars between this and last year to get information. Showing up at World Refugee Day is a really big deal. It's free for everyone to attend. There's a soccer tournament, cultural performances, a ton of food, and it's all offered for free. We usually see about over 1,000 people for that event.
That's great.
And then, I think that, as the needs kind of arise with more and more arrivals, we're working really hard to try to, create some centralized, donation centers / kind of volunteer efforts. So as we have announcements about that moving forward, we'll definitely put that out into our newsletter. Excellent. And have our community partners share that out as well.
So helpful. Thank you. Mark, we started with you. We're going to end with you. Final thoughts about how our community can engage?
Yeah, I think asking questions and being available goes a long way. So our role as a state refugee coordinator's office is really to be the glue within all of our statewide network to ensure that our nonprofits, resettlement agencies, any stakeholder involved in this work is getting the support they need, educational opportunities, or even technical assistance. We don't work directly with resettling individuals. We work mostly on the long-term sort of integration sustainability, which has been, I feel like I've used those two words maybe 1,000 times today. But it's really important to remind folks this is what our purpose is. And so I would say what support we could offer to the community is really helping coordinate and getting people connected to opportunities, any sort of presentations, educational events that we could be a part of alongside my colleagues on the call. We could serve as coordinating those, and just being an overall hub for technical assistance and information to the community, and being that bridge between the state of Iowa, Governor Reynolds' office, and then the greater community as well. So we help navigate some of those nuances and any kind of support we can provide to help educate the community and mobilize the community alongside Rossi and the state itself. That's the space we find ourselves in.
Panelists, thank you. I am so grateful for all of you and your organizations and all of those behind your work. There's so much that goes into it. And thank you to those of you who took time to join us today. I hope that you found this to be as insightful as I did. And please know we will follow up in an email to you to help you get connected to these organizations. As well, we want to make sure that you are checking out givedsm.org. That is our platform for you to get connected to nonprofit organizations' needs in our community. And let me tell you, they are uploading them right now in anticipation of your year-end giving. And so please use this time with your family over the holidays to get around your computer, to search. You can search by your areas of interest. You can get connected right then and there to make some really meaningful contributions into local organizations who need you. You're also going to find in our follow-up email an offer to receive a DVD copy of Iowa Public Television's A Promise Called Iowa. Our friends at IPTV have generously offered to share this DVD resource with those of you who are interested. So we'll give you more information about how to access that in the follow-up email as well. So as you consider year-end giving, please know your community foundation is here to stand by you and serve you. Be in touch. Our phone is ringing at 883-2626. Give us a call and we'll get connected. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for your Better Together spirit as we make this a community that's welcoming for all. Enjoy your day.